Hello, Void Dwellers. So another pointless, idiotic and irrelevant UN committee made up of twisted dark souls that have confirmed the history of antisemitism have released an imaginary report about how Jews are once again poisoning the wells. They prove that Jews are in fact responsible for the Black Death in Europe and are the most evil thing that has ever eviled. And if you think that is ridiculous, you're right, it is. See, this committee from the UN's Human Rights Council, that council where countries like Iran, Russia and China get to sit and lecture to other countries how to maintain human rights, we do live in a Mickey Mouse kind of universe, don't we? Anyway, this committee has released a report that says Israel has tried to stop Palestinians from breeding. It's funny how Jews are really bad at all the bad things they do. Bad at committing genocide and bad at stop people from having babies. Because reports by both the UN itself and the Palestinians themselves show that the rate of birth and population growth in 2024 did not change in any way and continued at the same rate as it always have. In fact, the population grew by 90,000 people, even with the casualties of war. But it's not surprising that the report and reality don't mix when you actually dig into what they base their conclusions on. And it's nothing but rumors, hearsay, and troll logic. For example, check this out. Hear what Chris Sidoti, an Australian anti-Semite with a long history of persecuting and vilifying evil Jews in the name of justice, listen to what he actually gives as evidence in a press conference.
The fact that formula is almost impossible to obtain, and when it is obtained, it must be mixed with water that is generally unsafe.
That's right. The fact that during time of war it was more difficult to get formula in the strip and you had to mix it with water, which he claims was unsafe, which is a total lie because Gazans had access to clean water throughout the war. But that is what he uses as evidence of the Jews trying to stop Palestinians from having babies. This is the level of evil stupidity we're at right now. Following that logic, every single case in history in which warfare made conditions on the civilians harder is a case where the participating armies try to prevent them from having babies. How fucking retarded do you have to be to believe this crap? And of course, the fact that every Palestinian organization throughout their very short history targeted especially women and children, including during the 7th of October, and of course the murder of the Bibas family, that is by no means an attempt to stop Jews from making babies, right? Only evil Jews do evil things like that. But what I thought was very interesting is that the media, at least some of them, like, terror supporters like the BBC, they use the trigger word genocide in describing the report. But here's the thing. I made several videos already addressing the genocide blood libel. And one of the things I repeatedly said is that no organization with any formal capacity has made that accusation. Because they can't. Because unlike TikTokers and YouTubers, they can't just throw it in the air as a trigger word meant to incite people to hate Jews. Genocide has a very specific definition in international law. And so, in the same press conference, when challenged about the official definition of genocide, Adolf Sidoti replied,
You have to look into the intent of the Israelis, whether they want to commit a genocide.
Yes, you're correct. We have not made any finding of genocide.
That's right. Let's have another listen just to let it really sink in.
We have not made any finding of genocide.
Yep, there is no genocide. So apparently, evil Jews are stopping them from having babies, and bajillion people have been killed, but the population keeps growing at a steady rate, almost as if none of this is real, and no official organization can prove genocide. And all this is happening, by the way, as true genocide in Syria keeps taking place. Well, nobody cares. Nobody is reporting on it. There are no UN meetings about it, no committee to say how evil they are. Think about this. The Syrians are making people crawl and bark like dogs before executing them, and that's on camera, killing thousands of people, entire families, in just a few days. And mind you, not as a result of bombing. No, we're talking going into people's homes, dragging them out and killing them. Russia. Reports of what the Russians did in Ukraine are horrific. Rape, torture, mass execution of civilians, stealing babies, hundreds of children, maybe thousands, kidnapped and brought to Russia to be raised as Russians. Let that evilness sink in. In Africa, in the last year alone, thousands of civilians died by the hand of armies in Sudan, in Congo, and yet, according to Adolf Sidoti, these fucking Jews retaliating to an invasion and the worst atrocity since the Holocaust are the most criminal military in the world. You see the illogical obsession? That's because the truth is that people like Sidoti don't view the 7th of October as atrocities at all, nor the Holocaust. See, the Nazis were just defeated from a military point of view during World War II, but Nazi ideology, this belief that Jews are inferior and have to be wiped out and all means to that end are legitimate, that ideology is alive and well. It just dropped the cool leather clothing. Now, sometimes it has purple hair, sometimes it has cool tats, and sometimes it's a grapefruit-looking motherfucker from Australia who thought the only problem with the condition of our hostages when they were released is the fact that they were released still alive. Which is why I think Israel, and Jews in general, have to change tactic. We keep thinking that the world would be decent to us if we are decent to it. And we keep being proven wrong about it, and nothing changes. Jews in general, and Israel specifically, have a lot more power than they realize. You don't believe me? Okay, let's have a look. I asked ChatGPT if Israel boycotted the West, what would the impact be? Let's look at some of the answers. In technology, Israel is a major contributor to chip design and high internet speeds. All major companies have R&D centers in Israel, and most of the modern-day tech was invented and designed by Israeli engineers. For example, the multi-core CPU was designed by Israelis. The flash drive is an Israeli invention, things that are basic to our current modern world. Boycotting the West would be severing those ties to Israeli innovation. In cybersecurity, no one does better than Israeli companies. Both the private sector and governments of the West are dependent on Israeli security. If Israel boycotts them, they will become much more vulnerable. And in AI and machine learning, same thing pretty much. Israel is a major force. Whoever does not work with Israel would be left behind. In medicine, Israel is a major contributor to cutting-edge technologies, life-saving and life-changing treatments, and groundbreaking studies in the fight against cancer. Countries that Israel boycotts would be left behind, and the quality of life would diminish for the population. In defense and military, come on. Israel is the #1 designer and developer of cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge defense systems. Why do you think the Americans don't mind picking up the tab for Iron Dome, a system completely designed by Israelis? In the next few years, Israel is going to replace it with a new and unprecedented laser-based tech, which is not just better than Iron Dome, but it's also significantly cheaper, which will make Israel even more independent and less dependent on the Americans. And it's the first of its kind in the world. Actual Jewish laser. And Israel's allies, especially the US and the EU, enjoy Israeli defense technologies. And with the world getting hotter all the time, that is definitely something they would rather keep and not lose. And the list goes on and on. In agriculture, in finance, Israel is a major contributor to the West in every aspect of life. In fact, and even AI confirms it, the West would have been a very different place without Israel's contribution. We have power because we actually contribute. But we don't have power because we are willing to contribute no matter what they do to us. It's time for that to change. It's time for antisemitism to have a cost. I think Israel should not only start both civil suits against the members of the committee for defamation, as well as use the UN's own institutions to file complaints against these specific individuals, but a boycott movement against any private organization or government that has anything to do with them has to start. They should not be allowed to use Israeli resources, tech, or people. Also, Israel needs to convince more countries to leave the fake Human Rights Committee. And pressure can be applied on countries, again, by the threat of denying Israeli developments from them. We need to realize our worth. Unlike the anti-Semitic propaganda, the truth is that Jews in general and Israelis specifically have a problem of self-worth. That is why we always accept conditions and treatment that no one else would accept. But we're wrong. We matter to them more than you think. They are just an abusive partner that keep telling us that we need them more than they need us, so cover up that black eye and look pretty, okay? You take Jewish contribution out of the West? Let's put it this way. In World War II, one side exterminated the Jews, one side employed them. Guess who got to be a nuclear power first? And look, even ChatGPT believes that the West would not allow Israel's contribution to be denied from them because they are too deeply embedded into Western life. So if we start using that leverage that we have, they will become more decent towards us. Of course, the problem is that unlike what the anti-Semites think, we're not a hive mind. We're not organized. And in Israel, which is where things should start, we have a corrupted and incompetent government that drags the country to new laws every fucking day. So the first job, once the hostages are back home, is to rid ourselves of it and build a government that would actually serve not only the Israeli interest, but the interest of every Jew around the world. And no, I have no idea how to get there. If I did, I wouldn't have left to begin with. I'm just sharing my frustrations with the void. Because I know, not believe, know, that things could be far better. That this is not hopeless. That we have far more options than we realize. But in a world where Israel is led by incompetent idiots with no vision or ideology except for self-interest and self-preservation, bullies and Nazis like Adolf Sidoti spread lies about us with no consequences. And the only way to fight anti-Semitism is if it has consequences.